Welcome everyone to St. Johns County, to the courthouse. I'm R.J. Larizza, the elected state attorney for the 7th Judicial Circuit. Today, the St. Johns County Grand Jury convened and issued an indictment against Aiden Fucci for first-degree murder involving our victim, Tristyn Bailey. Once the grand jury had done the indictment, we did a transfer order, which I believe some of the folks in the media had already gotten a hold of, transferring the case from juvenile court to adult court. The indictment is the triggering document which signals and executes the move into the adult court system. So Aiden Fucci will be tried as an adult in St. Johns County for first-degree murder. Now, Aiden was initially charged with second-degree murder. The indictment is for first-degree premeditated murder. Now, some folks have asked us why, or wanted to know why we would charge premeditated murder, and also why we would choose to seek adult sanctions on Aiden, who is a 14-year-old boy. Well, we're going to talk about both of those together to give you an idea of why the decision was made to charge him as an adult, and why we believe first-degree premeditated murder is the appropriate charge. I think both of those intertwine and will explain why we did what we did. First off, I want to tell you, it brings me no pleasure to be charging a 14-year-old as an adult with first-degree murder. But I can tell you also that the executive team and I reviewed all the facts, all the circumstances, the applicable law, and it was not a difficult decision to make that he should be charged as an adult. It's a sad decision and a sad state of affairs, but it was clear to us after we looked at what happened that it was not only appropriate to charge the defendant as an adult, but it was really the only choice that we could make. Now, you've heard that our victim, Tristyn, was stabbed. And I believe Sheriff Hardwick, who I'd like to say wishes he could be here today. Unfortunately, he couldn't be. But we'll have Director Skip Cole will speak for the Sheriff's Office. But to say that it was horrific could arguably be made as an understatement. The medical examiner completed an autopsy on our victim and identified confidently that there were 114 stab wounds. 114. At least 49 of those stab wounds were to the hands, arms, and the head, and were defensive in nature. The bottom line is that premeditation could be inferred, certainly, from just the sheer number of stab wounds that Tristyn Bailey had to suffer. Every time that arm went back and every time that arm went down, that was premeditation. And it happened, if you times 114 by 2, that's 228. But it's not just the fact that she was stabbed 14 times, or 114 times. It's also information that we were able to glean from witnesses. The defendant made statements to several people that he intended to kill someone. He didn't say who that was, but he indicated to witnesses that he was going to kill someone by taking them in the woods and stabbing them, which are certainly the facts of this case. The defendant had a knife that he carried with him. A knife was found in the pond, very close in proximity to our victim's body. That knife had a tip that was broken off. That tip was located by the medical examiner in the scalp of our victim. The statements that the defendant made to his friends made it clear that he was considering a homicide. And I got to tell you this, it's disturbing and concerning that those statements were not, let's say, adequately or appropriately, or not taken seriously by the folks that hurt them. I'm not saying that this could have been avoided, but I'm saying that it was never reported beforehand. Now, as we move forward in this case, and we continue to develop the case, we will continue to develop more evidence. Not only do we have the knife, which was identified by witnesses as they say it's his knife. It's consistent, and the medical examiner says, with the wounds that were found on Tristyn's body. And it's also the description and the hilt and the wounds themselves match up per the medical examiner. Not only that, we also have DNA evidence that we have developed regarding this case. There is the defendant's DNA on the body of the victim. And there is the victim's DNA on the knife blade, on shoes that belong to the defendant that were found in his bedroom, on a t-shirt that was found in the defendant's bedroom. And there's additional items that we are looking at now that have been sent to the FDLE lab for confirmation of blood and DNA analysis. I just want to say that I hope parents will learn something from this vicious and brutal murder. And that is that you need to know what your kids are doing and what they're saying. Because while we might not be able to stop these brutal and vicious murders from happening, we ought to at least try. And sometimes parents might be reluctant to dig into what their kids are doing. For those of you who have kids, you know that when you start wondering and asking and investigating what they're doing, you have a battle on your hands. But it's a battle worth fighting. So I hope that parents will realize that teenagers are capable of things we have never imagined they could be. And this case is an example of that. What I'd like to do now is invite Director Skip Cole, the Director of Criminal Investigations for the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, to say a few words.
Thank you. It's difficult to hear all that. Okay, my name's Howard Cole. I'm the Director of the Criminal Investigations Division. I'm here today representing Sheriff Hardwick and all the men and women of the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. To begin, we fully support the grand jury indictment, which we all know represents only the first step in this very long and difficult process. We remain confident in the strength and thoroughness of our investigation, and we will be fully prepared to present all the facts and evidence to a jury at the appropriate time. We'd also like to thank State Attorney R.J. Larizza and his team for their partnership during this case. From day one, our teams worked side by side, furthering the investigation and preparing this case for grand jury. Even though this case is now being transitioned to the State Attorney's Office, our detectives will continue to investigate all leads and evidence to the fullest. In conclusion, we extend our continued thoughts and prayers to the Bailey family. We want the Bailey family to know that they are not alone, and we will stand with them through this entire process until justice and accountability is served. Thank you.
Now I'd like to invite up Matt Walsh, who was the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Jacksonville region, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm FDLE Jacksonville Assistant Special Agent in charge, Matt Walsh. When a child goes missing or is in danger, time is critical. These are the most urgent cases in law enforcement, and we do everything we can to bring that child home safely. But sometimes, as heart-wrenching as it is, and despite our very best efforts, it isn't always possible. In these cases, we search for answers. Answers for the family and for the community. I'm so appreciative of our FDLE team and our law enforcement partners at St. John Sheriff's Office and here at the State Attorney's Office, Mr. Larizza's office, who dedicate themselves to this case and other cases around this community. Our forensic section had a very big role in this case. They work tirelessly, around the clock, overnight, to develop the DNA evidence Ms. Larizza has spoken about. Our agents have assisted in investigative support as much as we can, as much as needed by the St. John Sheriff's Office. And we continue that support to you in the Sheriff's Office. Our Missing Endangered Persons Information Clearinghouse, MEPIC, moved quickly to both issue a missing child alert for Tristyn and has been invaluable in providing analytical assistance in this investigation. And FDLE will continue to offer any support we can in this investigation into our community and working through this tragedy. Thank you.
I'd like to also acknowledge the Sheriff's Office, and there were a bunch of folks involved in this investigation, but the case agent was Corporal Hannon, Kurt Hannon, and he's done an excellent job running the investigation and working with our team. And the Sheriff's Office. Cases like this, look, there was video surveillance, there was DNA collected almost immediately. The deputy who responded at the scene to begin with, because remember, this started as a missing persons. Nobody knew what we really had for a while, but if it weren't for that deputy that responded, it could have been a lot longer before we actually were able to figure out exactly what we were dealing with here. And FDLE, folks, you know, testing DNA takes time. I mean, usually it could take months to get the DNA results back. But FDLE stepped up and said, we will process this evidence immediately for you. And I can't thank Matt and his crew enough, the folks at the lab, for doing that. I mean, it truly made a difference in how quickly we could get this investigation over. Also, I'd like to say, and this is really involving the Bailey family. I've met with them twice. They are wonderful, courageous, strong people. And I'll tell you, they're going to need all the courage and strength they can as we go through this process. You know, the juvenile system is not equipped for cases like this. The juvenile system, the maximum time that the defendant could spend in the juvenile system would be 21 till he's 21, and he'll be 15 this year. That is not adequate. That is not adequate or appropriate for what happened here. Additionally, the family has been receiving or has been made aware of comments on social media and threats. I want to tell y'all something. Law enforcement and the state attorney's office will be investigating any and all threats on social media for possible criminal charges. And I want folks to know the family needs your help. They need your support. If you can't give them that, then you should keep your mouth shut. And you shouldn't be using social media as a platform to exploit this terrible and horrific crime that we are now prosecuting. We should all be sad about what happened, and we should all be prepared to stand up and stand with the Bailey family as we work our way through this process. Because I'm telling you folks, the criminal justice process is not friendly to victims and their families. It is a difficult process to go through, and the Bailey family is going to be going through it for years. So please keep that in mind. You folks out there who want to support the Bailey family, please do. Those of you who don't, be careful. Be careful about what you say and do. Now, I'd like to open it up for questions if anybody has some. Yes, sir.
Mr. Larizza, I can tell with just your demeanor, having seen you speak on cases before, have you ever dealt with anything like this? Has your team ever dealt with anything like this?
Well, certainly not the number of stab wounds. And I mean, it's a 14-year-old that is the defendant and a 13-year-old girl who's the victim. I mean, I'd have to say no. I have not before today. Yes, ma'am.
Did the surveillance video show any signs of struggle between the two?
We don't, well, there's a lot of surveillance video. There's surveillance video from when Tristyn and Fucci leave, where they were together and walk down the road. There's several different places. We all know folks have ring videos and other types of videos now. And that there was no signs of any struggle based on those videos. We certainly don't know. We can't see what happened. at that point, but we know the result. So there certainly was a struggle. There were defensive wounds on this poor young lady, and she was fighting for her life. And it's just sad that we even have to talk about that. Yes, ma'am.
Any indication at this point in your investigation of whether Mr. Fucci may have been suffering from mental health conditions or was seeing a counselor for those kinds of issues?
No. No.
Do you
Yes.
know,
Yes, ma'am.
the police report that was just released said that Fucci struck Tristyn. Did he admit to stabbing her?
We're not going to talk about any confessions. If there were any, what I can tell you is that there are no statements that I'm aware of made by the defendant where he confesses to the crime. Okay?
You know what led up to them getting together that night? Was he texting her, asking to hang out? Were they having any arguments at all?
These kids, you know, they're teenagers, and they have their groups and they hang out. And so it was started out as just a few kids getting together and hanging out. But it didn't end that way. Yes, sir.
Sir, was this a thrill kill? Was it sexual in nature? I mean, there's so many theories out there. Has your office and have detectives with St. Johns County and FDLE found a motive here?
We're still working and investigating this case, and those details I'm not prepared to discuss at this time. Yes,
On the
ma'am.
heels of that, any signs of evidence of sexual assault in the autopsy?
We're not going to discuss details of that at this time either. Yes, ma'am.
What kind of pressure did you feel from the community to charge him as an adult? I know you guys got a lot of calls and emails. How many did you get?
I don't know, and no, I didn't feel any pressure at all. This is my job, to make these decisions along with the executive team. And while we're sad and we certainly take no pleasure in it, this is our duty. And we looked at the facts, we looked at the law, and I got to tell you, and the circumstances of the offense, there was no other alternative. The juvenile system is geared for kids maybe with drug issues or that commit nonviolent crime. When you get kids that get to this level of violence, the time and the accountability is not there, and the programs it's just not there. The adult system is where this case belongs. Yes, ma'am.
Was she tied up or restrained in any way?
We don't have evidence of any of that. The investigation is ongoing, but no, we have no evidence of that. Yes, sir.
What about the other teens? You obviously showed your disdain for their actions for having known about these homicidal statements that he made. Could they face any charges, any punishment, any kind of accountability here?
Well, first off, I don't consider it disdain. Disappointment. Disappointment that they didn't talk to somebody. But of course, they're teenagers, and that may be something that you could understand. I mean, I was a teenager once. I can still remember parts of that. But what I will say is, no, at this point, there's no evidence that we're aware of that would indicate that any of the kids that were involved, as far as friends who had testimony or evidence, had anything to do with the homicide or in any way have any criminal responsibility. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fucci being transferred already to an adult facility. Can you tell us what facility that is, and will he be held at that same facility pending trial?
I can't. That's a decision for the sheriff's office, and I think Sheriff Hardwick, along with the directors, they will make that decision about where he will not stay in Volusia County. I'm fairly certain of that.
Has he already been transferred as we speak?
I don't think so. I think we'll try to get some information to you about a first appearance. I think we will have that for you, maybe even as early as this afternoon, so that if you would like to try and attend or zoom into it, that you could do that. Yes, ma'am.
So will he not be coming to St. Johns County? He might go somewhere else?
At this point, that's still being determined. What we'll do is we'll find out where he's going to be and when, and we'll let you know. We'll notify you. Okay? Yes, sir.
And will he be kept, and this might be for Director Cole, will he be kept by himself because of the notoriety and the horrificness of this case?
Juveniles are kept separately, typically from adults, even in adult county and state facilities. so that they have protocols for that. And if he's held in the St. Johns County Jail, they have their protocols. If he's held in another facility, not run by the sheriff's office, they'll have their protocols, but he will be separated. Yes, ma'am.
Has Fucci showed any remorse?
There's video that I think y'all have access to, you've seen. I think that answers that question. Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe that life in prison without the possibility of parole is appropriate sentence for this?
Well, first off, let me say I think it would be, but that's not the case for the defendant. He could receive a life sentence. He could receive less because of the Graham Miller decisions from the United States Supreme Court saying that it would be cruel and unusual punishment to have a minor sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The irony there is, what about what happened to Tristyn? Would you consider that cruel? I certainly would. But the bottom line is that he will be eligible for, if he got a life sentence, that's the first if, he would be eligible for a review at 25 years. And at that point, a judge could decide either to reduce his sentence, leave it the same, or release him. But he will get the benefit of a generous consideration or accommodation simply because he was not 18 years old at the time. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any indication that he was under the influence at the time of the crime?
I don't believe so. Yes, ma'am.
Will there be another first appearance? If so, when?
There will be a first appearance. Not sure when, probably tomorrow, but what I said is we will get you that information. I'll ask Mr. Shorstein, our PIO, to make sure all of you are notified so that if you want to be there or at least zoom in that you can. Okay? Yes, sir.
Mr. Larizza, if this case were to go to trial, could it be tried here, in your opinion, here in St. Johns County?
Well, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. The attempt is always made to try it in the jurisdiction where the crime occurred. And the judge makes the ultimate determination about whether or not to transfer venue. The defense may ask for a change of venue, but typically in my experience, the judge will attempt to do it in the jurisdiction where it occurred first. And if that doesn't work, then pick another jurisdiction. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you said that these were kids hanging out. Do you have any indication that they were linked romantically in some way, either before that night or as of that night?
We're continuing the investigation, not prepared to really talk about that today.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know if Tristyn was his target? We heard a rumor that he was trying to lure other girls into the woods that night. Do we know if she was specifically who he intended that night?
We have no information that he had specifically targeted her. The information we have is that he had told friends that he was going to kill someone and that it was imminent within the next 30 days or within the month. And he talked about that to some of his friends several times. But there was never a specific individual identified. And at this point in time, the sad reality is this could have been simply a case of the wrong place at the wrong time.
So did he
Yes,
try and bring other girls out that night?
We have no information in that regard. No, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Does he have a criminal history? We can't see his juvenile records. Can you tell us about his past?
Well, juvenile records are confidential, but no, he didn't.
What about at school? Did he have any misbehaviors at school, getting in fights with kids at school?
I'm not prepared to discuss that at this time. Jessica?
The weapon that was found, was it like a pocket knife that you would carry around on a regular basis?
It was your typical folding buck knife. Buck knife.
Buck knife.
Buck knife, yes, ma'am. Buck knife.
Like for hunting?
Well, some people use them for hunting, and they have multiple uses, I would suspect.
Was his family aware that he carried around that knife?
Can't answer that question for you. Don't know. Folks?
Are they cooperating with you, his parents?
We have gotten a lot of witnesses that are cooperating, and that's about as far as I'm prepared to say at this time. Okay? Folks, I appreciate y'all being here. I appreciate your patience. Again, I want to thank FDLE and the Sheriff's Office And thank you for taking the time to spend a little time with us here today. Thank you.